Have you ever actually seen it? Have you ever been abroad? Have you ever been arrested for drunk driving? Have you ever been betrayed by a friend? Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Have you ever been drunk? Have you ever been fed? Have you ever been fingerprinted? Have you ever been fired from a job? Have you ever been hypnotized? Have you ever been in a car accident? Have you ever been in a helicopter? Have you ever been in a traffic accident? Have you ever been in Boston before? Have you ever been in love? Have you ever been in prison? Have you ever been inside this cave? Have you ever been inside Tom's house? Have you ever been kissed? Have you ever been married? Have you ever been mugged? Have you ever been on TV? Have you ever been punched in the face? Have you ever been robbed? Have you ever been shot at before? Have you ever been shot? Have you ever been stuck in an elevator? Have you ever been stung by a scorpion? Have you ever been to a costume party? Have you ever been to Africa? Have you ever been to America? Have you ever been to an opera? Have you ever been to Boston before? Have you ever been to Boston in the spring? Have you ever been to Disneyland? Have you ever been to the United States? Have you ever been to Tom's home? Have you ever been trout fishing? Have you ever broken a bone? Have you ever cheated on a test? Have you ever cheated on an exam? Have you ever considered it? Have you ever donated blood? Have you ever done any volunteer work? Have you ever done anything illegal? Have you ever done it? Have you ever done that before? Have you ever dreamed about me? Have you ever dreamed of me? Have you ever driven a sports car? Have you ever driven a van? Have you ever dropped one? Have you ever dyed your hair? Have you ever eaten chocolate-covered popcorn? Have you ever eaten Japanese food? Have you ever eaten Mexican food? Have you ever eaten tomatoes with sugar? Have you ever eaten turkey? Have you ever eaten Turkish food before? Have you ever eaten whale meat? Have you ever even met Tom Jackson? Have you ever forgotten your wife's birthday? Have you ever found a four-leaf clover? Have you ever given a speech in French? Have you ever given money to a beggar? Have you ever gone skiing? Have you ever gone spearfishing? Have you ever gone to Boston? Have you ever gone to see a horse race? Have you ever gone to the beach with Tom? Have you ever gotten a speeding ticket? Have you ever gotten food poisoning? Have you ever had a baby? Have you ever had a dream about me? Have you ever had a girlfriend? Have you ever had a heart attack? Have you ever had a job? Have you ever had a long-distance relationship? Have you ever had a near-death experience? Have you ever had a pet? Have you ever had a run-in with Tom? Have you ever had a serious illness? Have you ever had any serious illness? Have you ever had anything custom-made? Have you ever had food poisoning? Have you ever had these symptoms before? Have you ever had your fortune told? Have you ever heard her play the piano? Have you ever heard her sing on stage? Have you ever heard me play? Have you ever heard of Tom Jackson? Have you ever heard someone speaking French? Have you ever heard someone speaking in French? Have you ever heard such beautiful music before? Have you ever heard that song sung in French? Have you ever heard these operas sung in Italian? Have you ever heard Tom sing folk songs? Have you ever heard Tom speak French? Have you ever heard Tom speaking French? Have you ever heard Tom talk? Have you ever heard Tom's music? Have you ever killed anybody? Have you ever killed someone? Have you ever kissed a girl? Have you ever kissed a woman? Have you ever kissed Tom? Have you ever known Tom to lie? Have you ever lied to your boyfriend? Have you ever lived in another country? Have you ever lived in Boston? Have you ever lost your wallet? Have you ever made a pie before? Have you ever made ice cream? Have you ever met a famous person? Have you ever met Tom Jackson? Have you ever met Tom's girlfriend? Have you ever milked a cow? Have you ever noticed this before? Have you ever played golf? Have you ever played hooky? Have you ever played poker? Have you ever played with Tom's dog? Have you ever read a book in French? Have you ever read any French poems? Have you ever read Gulliver's Travels? Have you ever read this book? Have you ever ridden a motorcycle? Have you ever ridden in a sports car? Have you ever saved someone's life? Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? Have you ever seen a bear in this area? Have you ever seen a car accident? Have you ever seen a ghost? Have you ever seen a purple butterfly? Have you ever seen a shark? Have you ever seen a spider spinning its web? Have you ever seen a tiger around here? Have you ever seen a UFO? Have you ever seen any of these before? Have you ever seen anyone do this before? Have you ever seen anything like that? Have you ever seen anything so beautiful? Have you ever seen him swimming? Have you ever seen it hail? Have you ever seen one of these before? Have you ever seen one? Have you ever seen sausage being made? Have you ever seen snow? Have you ever seen the man in this photo? Have you ever seen this before? Have you ever seen this logo before? Have you ever seen this movie before? Have you ever seen Tom and Mary in the same room together? Have you ever seen Tom angry? Have you ever seen Tom cry? Have you ever seen Tom dance? Have you ever seen Tom eat? Have you ever seen Tom mad? Have you ever seen Tom not wearing glasses? Have you ever seen Tom when he's angry? Have you ever seen Tom when he's mad? Have you ever seen Tom without his glasses on? Have you ever seen Tom's mother? Have you ever shot a gun before? Have you ever shot a gun? Have you ever shot a rifle? Have you ever shot anybody? Have you ever skipped school? Have you ever smoked? Have you ever sold a car? Have you ever spent any time in Boston? Have you ever spent time in Boston? Have you ever spent winter here? Have you ever spoken to Tom in French? Have you ever stirred your coffee with a fork? Have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever studied abroad? Have you ever studied archaeology? Have you ever sung in French? Have you ever sung in public? Have you ever sung with Tom? Have you ever taught French to anyone? Have you ever thought about becoming a teacher? Have you ever thought about modeling? Have you ever thought about moving to Boston? Have you ever thought about quitting your job? Have you ever thought about studying French? Have you ever thought about writing a book? Have you ever thought of leaving? Have you ever told your boyfriend a lie? Have you ever traveled alone? Have you ever traveled by plane? Have you ever tried feeding your dog peanut butter? Have you ever tried scuba diving? Have you ever tried skateboarding? Have you ever tried skating on the river? Have you ever tried telling a joke in French? Have you ever tried to learn another language? Have you ever tried to quit smoking? Have you ever tried using it? Have you ever uploaded a video to YouTube? Have you ever used a gun before? Have you ever used one of these? Have you ever visited Boston before? Have you ever washed your face with body soap? Have you ever won a prize? Have you ever worked as a bartender before? Have you ever written a computer program? Have you ever written a letter in French? Have you ever written a letter to Santa?